With the Krylosians gone, the town began to heal. The ships disappeared into the sky as quickly as they had arrived, leaving behind only faint traces of their presence. For Ethan, the victory felt bittersweet. He had proven himself, not just to the aliens, but to himself. But the cost of the battle lingered in his mind. Homes were damaged, friendships strained, and Natalie's injury served as a constant reminder of the danger he brought to those around him. In the days that followed, life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be for someone like Ethan. Laura tried her best to keep things light at home, cooking Ethan's favorite meals and encouraging him to take breaks from training. But Ethan couldn't stop thinking about what Valen had said. Intentions mean little when power is involved. Those words haunted him. He knew the Krylosians weren't the only ones who might see him as a threat. What if others came looking for him? What if he lost control again? Natalie stayed by his side, helping him practice his abilities and offering advice whenever he doubted himself. "You're not alone in this," she reminded him one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "We'll figure it out together." Ethan appreciated her support more than he could say, but deep down, he wondered if staying in the small town was selfish. Every time he used his powers, even for something small like fixing a broken fence or moving a fallen tree, people whispered. Some still saw him as a hero, while others viewed him with fear or suspicion. He didn't blame them. It was hard to trust something you didn't understand. Dr. Alan Hughes visited one afternoon, bringing news that made Ethan's decision even harder. "The Krylosians may have left," Hughes explained, "but there are others out there who know about you now. They'll come eventually, whether to study you, control you, or destroy you. You need to decide what kind of life you want before they force the choice on you." Ethan spent hours thinking about Hughes' words. Part of him wanted to stay, to protect his family and friends, and live the quiet life he'd always dreamed of. But another part of him knew he couldn't ignore the bigger picture. He wasn't just a boy from Nebraska anymore. He was the galaxy's strongest life form, born with a purpose he still didn't fully understand. One night, under a sky filled with stars, Ethan finally made his choice. He stood beside Natalie, who looked at him with quiet understanding. "I think I need to leave," he said softly. "Not forever, but I need to find out who I am, what I'm meant to do." Natalie nodded, though her eyes glistened with tears. "I get it," she said, "but promise me one thing. You'll come back. No matter where you go or what you face, don't forget where you came from." "I won't," Ethan promised, pulling her into a tight hug. "And I'll never forget what you've done for me." The next morning, Ethan packed a small bag and said goodbye to his mom. Laura hugged him tightly, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Be safe, Ethan. Remember who you are, and whose son you are." As he walked toward the edge of town, Ethan glanced back at the place he called home. It was hard to leave, but he knew it was the right decision. For now, ahead of him lay an unknown future, full of challenges and discoveries. Whatever came next, he was ready to face it, with courage, determination, and the knowledge that he wasn't truly alone. When Ethan reached the open fields outside town, he paused and looked up at the stars. Taking a deep breath, he focused his energy, feeling a familiar warmth surge through his body. In a flash of light, he rose into the air, heading toward the horizon. His journey across the galaxy was just beginning, and though the path ahead was uncertain, Ethan knew one thing for sure. He would always carry a piece of Earth and its people with him, no matter how far he traveled. Ethan and Natalie approached the Krylosian mothership under the cover of darkness, their footsteps muffled by the soft earth. The massive vessel loomed ahead, its surface shimmering faintly in the moonlight. Ethan could feel the hum of its energy in his bones, a constant reminder of the power he was about to face. His heart pounded as they crept closer, every shadow making him flinch. "This is crazy," Natalie whispered, clutching her injured shoulder. "What if they catch us?" "They won't," Ethan said, though his voice lacked conviction. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but he knew one thing. They couldn't keep running forever. If he wanted to protect his family, his friends, and everyone else on Earth, he had to take a stand. And that meant facing Commander Valen directly. They reached the base of the ship, where a glowing doorway pulsed with light. Ethan hesitated for a moment before stepping forward. As he did, the door slid open silently, revealing a long, dimly lit corridor. The air inside felt different, cold and heavy, like it carried the weight of something ancient. Natalie followed closely behind, her breath quick and shallow. The corridor led them to a large chamber filled with strange equipment and glowing panels. In the center stood Commander Valen, surrounded by several other Krylosians. Their masks reflected the light, making it impossible to tell where they were looking. Ethan stepped into the room, his fists clenched at his sides. "You have courage," Valen said, its voice calm but edged with curiosity. "Few would dare enter our ship willingly." "I'm not here to fight," Ethan replied, forcing himself to sound steady. "I want answers. Why are you so afraid of me? What do you think I'll do?" Valen tilted its head slightly, as if considering the question. "You carry the essence of the Centauri warrior, a being capable of unimaginable destruction. We cannot risk allowing such power to remain unchecked." "But I'm not trying to destroy anything," Ethan shot back, frustration rising in his chest. "All I've ever wanted is to live a normal life. You're the ones causing all this chaos." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Valen raised a hand, signaling the other Krylosians to step back. "Perhaps we misjudged you," it said slowly. "But intentions mean little when power is involved. Even now, your abilities grow stronger. How can we trust that you will not lose control?" Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but Natalie stepped forward, her voice firm despite her obvious pain. "Because he's not alone," she said. "He has people who care about him, who believe in him. Isn't that worth something?" Valen studied her for a moment before turning back to Ethan. "Very well," it said finally. "Prove your intentions. Face me in combat. If you prevail, we will leave your planet. And you, alone." Ethan's stomach sank. Combat. Against an alien commander. But there was no backing out now. Taking a deep breath, he nodded. "Fine. Let's do it." The Krylosians cleared the room, leaving only Ethan and Valen standing in the center. A low hum filled the air as energy fields activated around them, creating a barrier that trapped them inside. Valen moved first, raising a hand and sending a blast of energy toward Ethan. He barely managed to dodge, the force of the attack knocking him off balance. Determined not to give up, Ethan focused all his strength and countered with a pulse of his own energy. It struck Valen, sending the alien stumbling back. The battle raged on, each strike more intense than the last. Ethan pushed himself harder than ever before, drawing on reserves of power he didn't know he had. Finally, after what felt like hours, Ethan landed a decisive blow. Valen fell to one knee, its mask cracking slightly. For the first time, Ethan saw a flicker of respect in the alien's eyes. "You have proven yourself," Valen said, rising slowly. "We will honor our promise and leave your world." As the Krylosians began retreating, Ethan collapsed to the ground, exhausted but victorious. Natalie rushed to his side, tears streaming down her face. "You did it," she whispered, hugging him tightly. For the first time in weeks, Ethan allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope. The fight might be over, but he knew his journey was far from finished. The next few days were a blur of pain and exhaustion for Ethan and his group. They moved constantly, avoiding open spaces and sticking to the densest parts of the forest. Natalie's injury slowed them down, but Laura did her best to care for her, using makeshift bandages and whatever supplies they had left. Despite her efforts, Natalie grew weaker with each passing hour, her face pale and drawn. Ethan felt responsible for everything that had happened. If he hadn't drawn the Krylosians' attention, none of this would have occurred. Every time Natalie winced in pain or Laura looked at him with tired, worried eyes, Guilt weighed heavily on his chest, but there was no time to dwell on it. They had to keep moving. One evening, as they huddled around a small fire, Ethan noticed something strange about Jake Miller. The childhood friend who had visited them at the cabin had been acting oddly ever since the attack. At first, Ethan thought it was just stress, but now he wasn't so sure. Jake kept glancing at his phone, typing messages when he thought no one was looking. It didn't take long for Ethan to piece things together. "You've been talking to them, haven't you?" Ethan asked suddenly, his voice low but sharp. Everyone turned to look at him, startled by the accusation. Jake froze, his hand still hovering over his phone. For a moment, he seemed unsure how to respond. Then he sighed, lowering his head. "I didn't have a choice," he admitted quietly. "They threatened my family. Said they'd hurt them if I didn't help." Laura gasped, clutching Natalie's arm. "Jake, how could you?" she asked, her voice trembling with anger and disbelief. "I'm sorry," Jake said quickly, looking up at them with wide, fearful eyes. "I didn't want anyone to get hurt. I thought maybe if I helped them, they'd leave us alone." Ethan clenched his fists, fighting back the urge to lash out. As much as he wanted to be angry, he understood why Jake had done it. Fear made people do things they wouldn't normally consider. Still, betrayal was betrayal. And now, they were all in even greater danger because of it. Before anyone could say anything else, the sound of engines filled the air. Bright lights pierced through the trees, illuminating their hiding spot. The Krylosians had found them. "Run," Ethan shouted, grabbing Natalie's uninjured arm to help her up. Laura followed closely behind as they sprinted deeper into the woods. Jake hesitated for a moment before joining them, guilt written all over his face. The chase was relentless. The Krylosians moved faster than expected, their advanced technology giving them an edge. Just when it seemed like escape was impossible, Ethan spotted a narrow ravine ahead. Without hesitation, he led the group toward it, using his powers to create a makeshift bridge out of fallen branches and vines. "Go," he urged, helping Natalie cross first. Laura went next, followed by Jake. By the time Ethan reached the other side, the Krylosians were almost upon them. One of them fired a beam of energy, narrowly missing Ethan as he leaped across. On the far side of the ravine, Ethan used his powers to collapse the bridge, sending debris tumbling into the chasm below. The Krylosians stopped at the edge, watching silently as the gap widened. For now, they were safe, but Ethan knew it wouldn't last. As they caught their breath, Natalie leaned against a tree, her eyes closed in pain. "We can't keep running like this," she murmured weakly. "We need a plan." Ethan nodded, his jaw tightening with resolve. She was right. Running wasn't enough anymore. He needed to end this, once and for all. Turning to the others, he spoke firmly. "I'm going to confront them. Alone." "No," Laura cried, stepping forward. "You can't go by yourself. They'll kill you." "They won't," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "I'm stronger than they think, stronger than I realized. If I don't stop them now, they'll never stop hunting us." Natalie reached out, gripping his hand tightly. "Then let me come with you," she insisted. "You're not doing this alone." For a moment, Ethan considered refusing. But seeing the determination in her eyes, he relented. Together, they would face whatever came next, because sometimes strength wasn't about fighting alone. It was about having someone who believed in you when you needed it most. The burst of energy Ethan unleashed was unlike anything he had ever done before. It surged outward in a blinding wave, forcing the Krylosians to retreat several steps. Their sleek suits crackled with static as they struggled to regain their balance. For a brief moment, the forest fell silent except for the sound of leaves rustling in the aftermath. Ethan stood frozen, his chest heaving as he stared at his trembling hands. He hadn't meant to release so much power. It had come instinctively, driven by fear and desperation. But now, seeing the effect it had on the aliens, A flicker of confidence sparked within him. Maybe he really could fight back. Commander Valen recovered first, his masked face tilting slightly as if recalculating their approach. Impressive, the alien said, its voice calm but edged with caution. But brute force will not save you, or your companions. Before Ethan could respond, one of the Krylosians raised a weapon and fired a beam of light directly at Natalie. She screamed as the blast hit her shoulder, knocking her to the ground. Laura rushed to her side, tears streaming down her face as she tried to shield Natalie from further harm. "No," Ethan shouted, his voice raw with anger. A surge of emotion flooded through him, fueling his powers once again. Without thinking, he extended his hand toward the Krylosian who had attacked Natalie. A pulse of energy shot from his palm, striking the alien and sending it crashing into a tree. The impact left a deep crater in the bark, and the alien slumped to the ground, motionless. The remaining Krylosians hesitated, clearly unsure how to handle this unexpected turn. Commander Valen stepped forward, raising both hands in what might have been a gesture of peace or surrender. "We do not wish to harm your allies," it said slowly. "Our mission is to neutralize the threat you pose. Nothing more." Ethan glared at them, his fists clenched. "Then leave us alone," he growled. "I'm not your enemy." For a moment, it seemed like the standoff might end peacefully. But then another ship descended nearby, its engines roaring as reinforcements arrived. Dozens of Krylosians poured out, surrounding the group. Ethan knew he couldn't take them all on, not yet. His earlier display of power had drained him, leaving him weak and unsteady on his feet. Natalie, still clutching her injured shoulder, looked up at him with determination despite her pain. "You can do this, Ethan," she whispered. "You're stronger than they are. Just focus." Her words gave him strength, but even as he prepared to fight again, something unexpected happened. From behind the trees emerged Dr. Alan Hughes, holding a small device that emitted a high-pitched whine. The sound caused the Krylosians to stagger, their movements slowing as if weighed down by an invisible force. "Go," Hughes shouted, waving Ethan and the others toward the woods. "I'll hold them off." Ethan hesitated, torn between gratitude and guilt. "Why are you helping us?" he asked. Hughes didn't answer. Instead, he turned back to face the aliens, adjusting the device in his hands. "Just go," he repeated urgently. Knowing they had no other choice, Ethan helped Laura carry Natalie deeper into the forest. Each step felt heavier than the last, exhaustion threatening to overwhelm him. Behind them, the whine of Hughes' device grew fainter until it disappeared entirely, replaced by the distant hum of alien ships. When they finally stopped to rest, Ethan collapsed onto the damp ground, his body trembling from exertion. Natalie winced as Laura tended to her wound, wrapping it tightly with a strip of cloth torn from her shirt. "We can't keep running forever," Natalie said softly. "They'll find us eventually." Ethan nodded, staring at the dark canopy above. He knew she was right. Running wasn't a solution. It was only delaying the inevitable. If he wanted to protect his family and friends, he needed to confront the Krylosians head-on. And to do that, he would need to master his powers completely. As dawn broke over the horizon, Ethan made a silent vow. He wouldn't run anymore. Whatever came next, he would face it, with courage, with strength, and with the people he loved by his side. After escaping into the woods, Ethan and Natalie found temporary refuge in an old cabin hidden deep among the trees. It belonged to a reclusive neighbor who rarely used it, making it the perfect hiding spot, for now. The air inside was musty, and dust covered every surface, but Ethan didn't care. All that mattered was staying safe from the Krylosians. Laura arrived soon after, her face pale with worry. She carried a small bag filled with food and supplies, along with a flashlight and blankets. "We can't stay here long," she said, glancing out the window nervously. "They'll find us eventually." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. He knew his mom was right. The Krylosians had advanced technology, and it wouldn't take them long to track him down. But for the moment, They were safe, and he needed to focus on controlling his powers. Every time he lost control, it put everyone around him at risk. Natalie sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping through one of the books she'd brought earlier. "There's got to be something useful in here," she muttered, scanning the pages. "Maybe there's a way to block their scans or hide your energy signature." Ethan appreciated her optimism, but he wasn't sure anything could stop the Krylosians. Still, he couldn't afford to give up. Not when so much was at stake. Over the next few days, he practiced tirelessly, pushing himself harder than ever before. With Natalie and Laura watching, he learned to create shields of energy to protect himself and others. He also discovered he could manipulate light, bending it around objects to make them nearly invisible. Despite his progress, tension lingered in the air. The Krylosians hadn't attacked again, but their presence loomed over the town like a storm cloud. Some residents sided with the aliens, believing they offered protection or answers. Others rallied behind Ethan, seeing him as humanity's only hope against the invaders. The divide grew deeper each day, and Ethan hated being the cause of it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a knock on the cabin door startled them. Ethan tensed, ready to defend himself, but when he opened the door, he saw Jake Miller standing there. Jake was a childhood friend, someone Ethan had trusted for years. But lately, Jake had been acting strange, asking too many questions about Ethan's abilities. "Hey man," Jake said, shifting awkwardly. "I just wanted to check if you're okay. Things are getting crazy out there." Ethan hesitated before stepping aside to let him in. Something about Jake's demeanor felt off, but he didn't want to accuse his friend without proof. Laura and Natalie exchanged uneasy glances but said nothing. Jake stayed for less than 10 minutes, chatting casually about the chaos in town. When he left, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. That night, as they settled in for sleep, Natalie voiced what everyone else was thinking. "Do you think we can trust him?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," Ethan admitted, "but I don't have a good feeling about this." His instincts proved correct sooner than expected. Early the next morning, the sound of engines woke them. Peering through the window, Ethan saw several alien ships hovering above the trees, their lights scanning the area. Within moments, beams of energy shot toward the cabin, blowing apart the walls and sending debris flying everywhere. Ethan acted quickly, creating a protective bubble around himself, Laura, and Natalie. The force of the explosion pushed them backward, but they were unharmed. As the dust settled, the Krylosians descended, surrounding them. Commander Valen, the leader, stepped forward, his voice cold and commanding. "Your resistance is futile, Ethan Carter. Surrender now, or we will eliminate those who stand with you." Natalie grabbed Ethan's arm, her eyes wide with fear. "Don't listen to them," she whispered. "You're stronger than they think." Ethan looked at his mom, then at Natalie, realizing the truth in her words. He couldn't let the Krylosians win. Not when so many people were counting on him. Taking a deep breath, he focused all his energy into his hands, unleashing a powerful wave of light that sent the aliens stumbling back. For the first time, Ethan felt truly alive. His powers weren't just a burden, they were a gift, and he was ready to use them to fight for what mattered most. The tension in the air was thick as Ethan stood face to face with the Krylosian leader. The alien's voice echoed in everyone's minds, calm but firm. "Ethan Carter is not human," it repeated. "He carries the essence of our greatest warrior. If left unchecked, his power could destroy entire worlds, or save them." Ethan felt a wave of confusion and anger wash over him. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, his voice trembling. "I'm just me. I don't know anything about your warrior or whatever you're saying." Dr. Alan Hughes stepped forward, his expression grim. "It's true, Ethan," he said softly. "Years ago, a dying alien race called the Zentari sent their strongest life form to Earth. They hoped it would survive by merging with a human embryo. That embryo was you." Ethan staggered back, his mind racing. He had always known he was different, but it was too much to process. Laura grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with fear. "That can't be right," she whispered. "My son is human. He's my boy." Hughes shook his head. "I'm sorry, Laura. I've spent years studying this. The Zentari chose Earth because they believed humanity was peaceful enough to protect their legacy. But now, the Krylosians have found out about Ethan, and they see him as a threat." The Krylosian leader raised a hand, silencing Hughes. "We do not wish to harm him," it said. "But we cannot allow such power to exist unchecked. If Ethan refuses to come with us willingly, we will take him by force." Panic rippled through the crowd. Some people shouted protests, while others backed away, afraid of being caught in the crossfire. Natalie pushed her way to the front, standing beside Ethan. "You can't just take him," she yelled, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "He hasn't done anything wrong." The Krylosian tilted its head, studying her for a moment before responding. "This is not your concern, human. Stand aside." Ethan clenched his fists, feeling the surge of determination rise within him. He wasn't going to let these aliens dictate his fate, or put his family and friends in danger. "If you want me," he said, his voice stronger now, "you'll have to go through me first." Before anyone could react, Ethan focused all his energy on the ground beneath the Krylosian's feet. With a loud crack, the earth split open, sending shards of dirt and rock flying into the air. The aliens stumbled back, momentarily disoriented. Taking advantage of the chaos, Ethan grabbed Natalie's hand and ran, pulling her toward the safety of the nearby woods. Laura hesitated for a moment before following, shouting for Ethan to wait. Behind them, the Krylosians quickly regained their footing. Beams of light shot past them, narrowly missing Ethan and Natalie as they ducked behind trees. The forest was dark and quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos they had left behind. Once they were far enough away, Ethan stopped to catch his breath. His heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Are you okay?" he asked Natalie, his voice low. She nodded, though her hands were shaking. "Yeah, I'm fine. But what do we do now? They're not just going to leave, Ethan." He knew she was right. The Krylosians wouldn't give up so easily. But for the first time, Ethan felt a spark of hope. He might not understand everything about himself yet, but he knew one thing: he wasn't alone. Between his mom, Natalie, and even Dr. Hughes, there were people who believed in him. And together, they might stand a chance against whatever came next. As the distant hum of the alien ships grew louder, Ethan made a silent promise to himself. No matter what happened, he would fight, not just for himself, but for everyone he cared about. The days following Ethan's conversation with Natalie were filled with tension. He began spending more time practicing his abilities, trying to understand their limits. With Natalie's encouragement, he pushed himself harder, learning to control the strange powers growing inside him. At first, it was small things, moving objects without touching them, or creating tiny bursts of energy in his palms. But as he practiced, the effects became bigger and more impressive. One evening, while testing his strength near the edge of the cornfield, Ethan accidentally sent a shockwave through the ground. The force knocked over a row of fence posts and sent birds scattering into the sky. Startled by the destruction, he quickly looked around to see if anyone had noticed. Luckily, the field was empty, but the incident left him shaken. What if he lost control again? What if someone got hurt? Natalie visited often, bringing books and articles about unexplained phenomena. She believed Ethan's powers might be connected to stories of UFO sightings or mysterious events throughout history. While Ethan appreciated her help, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The aliens hadn't returned, but he knew they would. And when they did, he needed to be ready. His fears came true sooner than expected. Late one night, as Ethan lay in bed staring at the ceiling, a low hum filled the air. It started faintly, like the buzz of electricity, but grew louder until the windows rattled. Ethan bolted upright, his heart pounding. Outside, the sky lit up with an eerie glow. Throwing on his jacket, he rushed outside, where Laura stood frozen on the porch, staring at the horizon. A massive spaceship descended slowly, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. It hovered above the fields just beyond town, casting a pale light over everything below. Dozens of smaller ships detached from the main vessel, spreading out across the area. The townsfolk emerged from their homes, shielding their eyes against the brightness. Whispers of fear rippled through the crowd as everyone tried to make sense of what they were seeing. Ethan stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. He didn't need anyone to tell him who or what this was. These were the same beings who had visited him before. This time, however, there was no hiding. The largest ship landed in the center of town, and a group of aliens stepped out. They were tall and slender, their bodies covered in sleek suits that reflected the light. Their faces remained hidden behind masks, giving them an unsettling, otherworldly appearance. One of the figures raised a hand, silencing the murmurs of the crowd. A voice echoed in everyone's minds, clear and commanding. "We are the Krylosians. We come seeking the one known as Ethan Carter." Gasps spread through the gathered townspeople. All eyes turned to Ethan, who stood frozen in place. Laura grabbed his arm, pulling him back toward the house. "Don't let them take you," she whispered urgently. But Ethan shook his head, stepping forward instead. He couldn't hide anymore. If the Krylosians wanted him, they would have to face him directly. As he approached the alien leader, another figure stepped forward. A human dressed in a dark suit. It was Dr. Alan Hughes, the man who had warned Ethan months ago. Hughes glanced at Ethan, his expression unreadable. "I told you they would come," he said quietly. Then, addressing the crowd, he added, "These beings are not here for war. They seek only one thing, the boy." Before anyone could react, the Krylosian leader spoke again. "Ethan Carter is not human. He carries within him the essence of our greatest warrior. We must ensure his power does not fall into the wrong hands." The words hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. Not human. Warrior? None of it made sense. Yet deep down, he felt a flicker of truth in their claim. Before he could respond, chaos erupted. Some townsfolk screamed and ran, while others shouted demands at the aliens. The Krylosians raised their weapons, sending beams of light shooting into the air as a warning. Ethan knew this was only the beginning. Whatever secrets he carried, they were about to change everything. For him, for his town, and possibly for the entire world. Ethan's 18th birthday came and went without much fanfare. Laura tried to make it special, baking his favorite chocolate cake and decorating the kitchen with balloons. But Ethan barely touched his food, too distracted by what had happened in the cornfield weeks earlier. The memory of the alien visitors haunted him, their words replaying in his mind over and over. "You are the one we seek." What did that even mean? Was he really connected to them in some way? As the days passed, Ethan began noticing new changes in himself. His strength, which had always been unusual, now felt almost limitless. One morning, while helping a neighbor repair a fence, he accidentally snapped a thick metal post clean in half with his bare hands. The neighbor stared at him, wide-eyed, but Ethan quickly laughed it off, saying he must have been leaning on it too hard. Inside, though, his heart raced. He didn't understand what was happening to him, or why. Then there were the other abilities. At first, they were subtle. A pen rolling off the table would stop midair when Ethan focused on it. A flicker of concentration could turn off a buzzing light bulb or push a chair across the room. At first, he thought he was imagining things, but soon there was no denying it. His powers were growing stronger every day. Laura watched her son struggle with these changes, her worry deepening with each passing week. She wanted to help, but how could she explain something she didn't understand herself? One evening, after finding Ethan practicing his abilities in the backyard, she finally spoke up. "Ethan," she said gently, "you need to talk to someone about this. Someone who can guide you." Ethan shook his head. Who, Mom? Who's going to believe me? People will think I'm crazy, or worse, they'll try to lock me up. Laura sighed, knowing he was right. Their quiet town wasn't ready for something like this. But before she could say anything else, a car pulled into their driveway. Out stepped Natalie Brooks, a young journalist who had recently moved to town. She smiled warmly as she approached them, holding a notepad in one hand. "Hi, Mrs. Carter." "Hi, Ethan. I hope I'm not interrupting." Natalie had been asking questions around town for weeks, trying to uncover stories for the local paper. So far, she hadn't caused any trouble, but Ethan immediately tensed. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice sharper than he intended. "I just wanted to chat," Natalie replied, unfazed by his tone. "I've heard some interesting things about you, Ethan. People say you're different. Is that true?" Ethan glanced at his mom, unsure how to respond. Laura gave him an encouraging nod, silently urging him to trust her. Finally, Ethan relented. "Fine, but not here. Follow me." He led Natalie to the barn, where he felt safer talking. Once inside, he hesitated, then decided to test her. Focusing on a rusted shovel leaning against the wall, he made it float slightly off the ground. Natalie's eyes widened, but instead of screaming or running, she smiled. "Okay, so you're definitely not normal. Care to tell me more?" For the first time, Ethan found himself opening up to someone outside his family. He told Natalie about the strange things he'd done since he was a child, the encounter with the aliens, and the warnings from Dr. Hughes. To his surprise, Natalie listened intently, taking notes but never judging him. When he finished, she leaned back against the barn wall, thinking, "This is huge, Ethan. Like, bigger than huge. If what you're saying is true, you're not just special, you're extraordinary." Her words sent a chill down his spine. Extraordinary sounded nice, but it also scared him. What if the aliens returned? What if others found out about him? As if reading his mind, Natalie added, "Don't worry. I won't tell anyone, but you need to figure out how to control these powers. You don't know who, or what, might be watching." Ethan nodded, grateful for her advice. For the first time in weeks, he felt less alone. Little did he know, Natalie's involvement would soon lead to even greater challenges and revelations that neither of them could have anticipated. Ethan's life took a strange turn after that summer evening when Dr. Alan Hughes appeared out of nowhere. The man had been polite but mysterious, his words lingering in Ethan's mind long after their meeting ended. "You're not like other people," Hughes had said, his voice calm yet serious. "There's something inside you, something ancient and powerful. They will come for you soon." At first, Ethan tried to brush it off. He told himself it was just some crazy stranger talking nonsense. But the more he thought about it, the harder it became to ignore. Why did Hughes know his name? How did he find him in such a small, forgotten town? And what did he mean by they? Ethan wanted answers, but there was no one he could ask, not even his mom. Laura noticed the change in her son almost immediately. He seemed distant, lost in thought, and spent even more time alone than usual. One afternoon, she found him sitting on the porch, staring at the horizon as if waiting for something to appear. "Ethan," she said softly, sitting beside him, "what's going on? You've been acting different lately." He hesitated before answering. "Do you ever feel like we don't belong here?" he asked quietly, avoiding her gaze. Laura frowned, unsure how to respond. Before she could say anything, Ethan stood up and walked away, leaving her with a heavy feeling in her chest. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan began noticing things he hadn't before. Small objects around the house would move slightly when he focused on them, as though responding to his thoughts. Once, while helping his neighbor fix a tractor, he accidentally lifted the entire engine block with one hand, startling everyone, including himself. Thankfully, the neighbors laughed it off, chalking it up to adrenaline or teamwork. But Ethan knew better. Something inside him was changing, growing stronger every day. Then came the night everything changed again. Ethan was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The words of Dr. Hughes echoed in his mind. "They will come for you." Suddenly, a bright light flooded his room. He jumped out of bed and ran to the window, his heart racing. Outside, hovering above the cornfields, was a massive object glowing faintly against the dark sky. It wasn't an airplane or a drone. It was something else entirely. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as the object descended slowly, its surface smooth and metallic. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through the ground beneath his feet. For a moment, he considered waking his mom, but fear rooted him to the spot. What if this was what Hughes warned him about? What if they really had come for him? The ship landed silently in the field beyond the barn, and a door slid open. Out stepped several figures, tall and slender, their bodies covered in sleek, silver suits. Their faces were hidden behind reflective masks, making it impossible to tell where they were looking. Despite their eerie appearance, Ethan felt drawn to them, as if an invisible thread connected him to the strangers. One of the figures raised a hand, and a voice entered Ethan's mind, not spoken aloud, but clear as day. "We have searched for you across the stars," it said. "You are the one we seek." Ethan stumbled back, his pulse pounding in his ears. His first instinct was to run, but curiosity held him in place. Who were these beings? What did they want from him? As the figure took a step closer, Ethan realized this was only the beginning. Whatever secrets lay hidden within him, they were about to be uncovered, and nothing would ever be the same again. In a quiet little town in Nebraska, where cornfields stretched as far as the eye could see, a baby boy was born on a cold winter night. His name was Ethan Carter. From the moment he entered the world, there was something unusual about him. Most babies cried loudly after taking their first breath. But Ethan didn't. He simply opened his eyes and looked around, as if he were studying the room. The doctors thought it was strange, but they shrugged it off, telling Laura, Ethan's mother, that some babies were just calmer than others. Laura wasn't so sure. She noticed things that no one else seemed to pay attention to. For instance, when Ethan was only a few weeks old, she swore she saw him lift his tiny hand toward a rattle hanging above his crib, and the rattle moved on its own before falling silent. At first, Laura convinced herself it was just her imagination. After all, how could a newborn do such a thing? But then more odd things began to happen. When Ethan was 3 years old, Laura handed him a spoon during breakfast. He gripped it tightly, staring at it with wide eyes. Suddenly, the metal spoon bent in half as though someone had pressed down on it with great force. Laura gasped, dropping her coffee mug. It shattered on the floor, but Ethan didn't even flinch. He looked up at her with innocent curiosity, as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. That was the day Laura decided to keep Ethan's strange abilities a secret. As Ethan grew older, his differences became harder to hide. Once, while playing outside, he accidentally crushed a baseball bat in his hands during a game with neighborhood kids. Everyone laughed it off, thinking he'd found an old, weak bat. But Laura knew better. She watched from the kitchen window, her heart pounding. What was happening to her son, and why? Despite his growing strength, Ethan remained a gentle child. He avoided roughhousing and preferred spending time alone, reading books or gazing at the stars through a small telescope Laura had bought him for his 8th birthday. He loved learning about space, often asking questions that left Laura speechless. "What's out there, Mom?" he would ask, pointing to the sky. "Are we really alone?" Laura did her best to answer, though she couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan already knew more than he let on. Sometimes, late at night, she caught him standing by the window, staring at the moon with an expression that seemed too mature for a child. It was almost as if he were waiting for something, or someone. The townsfolk regarded Ethan as a polite but peculiar boy. They didn't know the truth, and Laura intended to keep it that way. She feared what might happen if people discovered how different he truly was. So she kept his secrets close, praying that whatever made Ethan special wouldn't bring danger to their door. One summer evening, when Ethan was 12, he wandered out to the edge of their property, near an old barn that hadn't been used in years. As he lay on the grass, gazing up at the stars, a man appeared out of nowhere. He introduced himself as Dr. Alan Hughes, a scientist who claimed to have traveled across the country searching for Ethan. Laura wasn't there to hear the conversation, but later that night, Ethan returned home, pale and shaken. When she asked what was wrong, he simply shook his head and said, "Nothing, Mom, just a bad dream." But Laura couldn't ignore the fear in his eyes, or the sinking feeling in her chest. Whatever Dr. Hughes had told Ethan, it changed him. And deep down, Laura knew their quiet life was about to get much more complicated.